Acid rain hissed against General Carson, Drave's combat helmet as he crouched behind a shattered concrete barricade. The battlefield smelled of burning metal and wet stone. Artillery flashed across the alien sky. Each explosion, briefly illuminating the ruins of what had once been a thriving outpost. Now it was nothing but smoke and corpses. 8 years of war had led to this moment. Delta Squad report, Drave growled into his comm. Static crackled. Eastern Quadrant secure, General, a voice replied. Heavy casualties, but we breached the command center. Drave closed his eyes for half a second. Another victory. Another graveyard. At 43, the war had carved deep lines into his face. His once black hair was streaked with gray, and the alien world's toxic atmosphere had weathered his skin like old stone. Begin sweep, he ordered. Execute Protocol 7. Even through the helmet, the words tasted like ash. Protocol 7 meant no prisoners. High Command had been clear. The enemy species was too dangerous to capture. Too alien, too unpredictable, too different. But after 8 years of watching them fight and die, Drave had realized something Command refused to admit. They weren't that different at all. They fought for land, for family, for survival, just like humans. The battlefield slowly fell silent as his soldiers moved through the ruins, finishing the last pockets of resistance. Drave stepped over debris and bodies alike, pulse rifle raised. Then he saw movement. A shift of shadow beneath a collapsed ceiling. He snapped his rifle up instantly. Target lock. The scanner painted a figure beneath the rubble. Blue skin. Combat armor. A long sniper rifle still clutched in a 3-fingered hand. One of their elites. Female, judging by body structure. Badly wounded. Dark indigo blood pooled beneath her, soaking into the cracked concrete. Yet she made no sound. No threats. No pleas. She simply stared at him through the mirrored visor of her shattered helmet. Waiting. Protocol 7 echoed in his mind. Execute. His finger tightened on the trigger. He had done it 100 times before. Quick. Clean. Merciful. But something about her posture stopped him. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't defiant either. She looked resigned, as if she had been waiting for him. General, a voice shouted over comms. Charges are set. 30 minutes until demolition. Drave didn't answer immediately. His rifle remained aimed at the alien sniper's heart. Then he lowered it. I found a survivor, he said quietly. I'll handle it personally. As he stepped closer, the alien's chest rose weakly. Still silent, still watching him. And for the first time in 8 years of war, General Carson Drave hesitated to pull the trigger. Because something deep inside him whispered a question he couldn't ignore. Why does she look like she knows me? The alien sniper should have been unconscious. Her injuries were catastrophic. Shrapnel wounds, plasma burns, internal bleeding. Yet she watched General Drave approach with eerie calm. No fear, no anger, just quiet observation. Drave crouched beside her carefully, rifle still ready. Can you understand me? He asked. The translation implant in his helmet hummed softly. The alien didn't respond. Her visor reflected his own image back at him, a battered human soldier pointing a weapon at a dying enemy. After a moment he exhaled. I'm taking you in for interrogation, he said. Technically a lie, technically treason, but he needed an excuse, even if it was only for himself. He activated his field med kit and began stabilizing her wounds. I don't know why I'm doing this, he muttered while sealing a plasma burn. But I want answers. The building suddenly trembled. A deep rumble shook the floor beneath them. Drave froze. Another explosion followed, much closer this time. General, his lieutenant shouted through the comm. They triggered their self-destruct. The entire compound is going critical. Drave cursed. Perfect. Of course the enemy had rigged their base to explode. He grabbed his rifle and turned. And that was when the ceiling collapsed. Concrete and steel screamed as the structure gave way. Drave barely had time to react. Then something slammed into him. A body. The alien sniper. She threw herself over him just as the ceiling crashed down. Metal beams. Broken concrete. Dust. Darkness. Pain woke him. Dull, heavy pain across his back. Drave coughed violently and forced his eyes open. Red emergency lights flickered inside his damaged armor. He was trapped inside a pocket of rubble. Alive. He shouldn't be alive. Then he looked down. The alien sniper lay beneath him. Her armor had been crushed. Fresh indigo blood poured from new wounds. She had shielded him with her own body. Drave stared at her in disbelief. "Why?" he croaked. Her cracked visor turned slightly toward him. That same unreadable gaze. Footsteps and voices echoed outside the rubble. "General Drave, can you hear us?" "Here," he shouted back. Within minutes, his soldiers dug them out. Medics rushed forward. Drave ignored the hands reaching for him. "Her first," he ordered. The soldiers hesitated. "Sir, she's enemy." Drave's voice turned ice cold. "She saved my life." "Treat her." The medics exchanged glances. Then they obeyed. As the stretcher carried the unconscious alien toward the transport ship, Drave followed silently. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Because that moment, and when she threw herself over him, hadn't felt random. It had felt intentional, as if she had been waiting for that exact moment. As if protecting him had always been the plan. And that realization raised a terrifying possibility. What if this wasn't the first time she had saved his life? 3 days later, military hospital, forward command. General Drave stood behind reinforced observation glass, staring down at the unconscious alien in the medical bay. She looked smaller without armor. Fragile. But the medical data told a very different story. The doctor beside him scrolled through the results. "General, her body is a battlefield." Drave frowned. "What do you mean?" The doctor turned the tablet toward him. "Scars, hundreds of them, plasma burns, bullet wounds, old fractures, some crudely healed, some surgically reinforced. These injuries span roughly 7 years," the doctor said. 7 years. The entire duration of the war. Drave's stomach tightened. "Modifications?" he asked. "Extensive," the doctor confirmed. "Reinforced skeleton, enhanced muscle density, accelerated healing." She paused. "None of it official military tech." "Black market work." The intelligence officer standing nearby crossed his arms. "She's not in our enemy database either. No identity markers. No military record." Drave stared through the glass again. "So she's a ghost." The officer nodded. "Looks that way." But Drave's mind was already racing. Because something else had started bothering him. For years, people had called him Lucky, the unkillable general. Bullets missed him. Snipers malfunctioned. Explosions somehow spared him. At the time, it had seemed like battlefield luck. Now he wasn't so sure. "Bring me the archives," Drave said suddenly. The intelligence officer blinked. "Sir, I want every battle report from the last 7 years. Every mission I was involved in. Every sniper engagement. Every unexplained anomaly." The officer frowned. "That's thousands of files." Drave didn't look away from the alien. Then start digging. Hours later, he sat alone reviewing the footage. Frame by frame, battle after battle. And slowly, a pattern emerged. Enemy snipers dying before they could fire. Weapons malfunctioning at the exact moment they aimed at him. Shots missing by millimeters. Too precise to be luck. Then he saw it. A blurred figure in distant recon footage. Combat armor. Moving through smoke. Watching him. Always just out of sight. Always gone before anyone noticed. Drave leaned back slowly. Heart pounding. One horrifying realization settling into place. For 7 years, someone had been protecting him. And that someone was lying unconscious in the hospital bed. His enemy. His guardian. And he still had no idea why. General Carson Drave didn't believe in coincidences. Not anymore. The combat recordings played across the war room wall like ghosts from another life. Battle after battle. Ambush after ambush. And always somewhere in the chaos, a shadow, a sniper. The same silhouette. Drave leaned forward, studying a paused frame. There she was, barely visible through the thermal haze, perched on a shattered tower hundreds of meters away. Her rifle aimed, not at him, at another sniper, an enemy marksman who had been seconds from killing him. The next frame showed the enemy sniper collapsing. The shot had come from her. Drave exhaled slowly. She's been protecting me. The intelligence officer beside him frowned. For 7 years? Yes. Why? Drave shook his head. That's what we're about to find out. A quiet alarm beeped behind them. Medical wing. The alien had regained consciousness. Drave entered the medical chamber alone. The alien sniper lay restrained to the diagnostic table. Not aggressively, just precautionary restraints. Her eyes were open, deep violet, focused directly on him. No confusion. No fear. Recognition. Drave stopped a few feet away. "So," he said quietly, "you're finally awake." The alien studied him silently. Then she spoke. Her voice was low and perfectly translated. "I wondered how long it would take you to notice." Drave felt a chill crawl up his spine. "You understand our language." "I've had years to learn." "Years?" That word again. Drave crossed his arms. 7 years. She didn't deny it. "You've been protecting me," he continued. "Yes." No hesitation. "No." Drave's jaw tightened. "Why?" For the first time, the alien hesitated. Her gaze lowered slightly. "Because it was my mission." Drave frowned. "Your mission was to keep me alive?" "Yes." Silence filled the room. That answer made absolutely no sense. Drave leaned closer. "Who gave you that order?" The alien lifted her eyes again. But this time, there was something darker in them. "Your own people." General Drave felt the ground shift beneath his entire understanding of the war. Because if she was telling the truth, then someone in human command had ordered an alien sniper to protect him. And that meant one thing. The war he had been fighting for 8 years was built on a lie. Drave stared at her, waiting for the punchline. It never came. "Explain," he said quietly. The alien tilted her head slightly, studying him. "You truly didn't know." It wasn't a question. Drave's voice hardened. "I asked you a question." She breathed slowly, then answered. "My designation is Kethra 9. I was created for a single purpose. Strategic battlefield intervention." Drave frowned. "You're an assassin." "No." Her eyes locked onto his. "I'm a guardian." That word echoed strangely in the sterile room. Drave gestured toward the screen showing old battle footage. "Guardians don't shoot their own people. They do when their mission requires it." A cold silence settled. Drave's pulse quickened. "Who assigned you to me?" Kethra hesitated again. Then she said the name. Project Shepherd. Drave felt something twist inside his chest. He knew that name. Everyone in high command did. But it was supposed to be a myth. A black program whispered about in intelligence circles. A program designed to shape the outcome of wars. "Project Shepherd doesn't exist," Drave said slowly. Kethra tilted her head again. "That is what they told you." Drave paced once across the room, thinking, calculating. If this was true, then someone had been manipulating the war from the shadows. Manipulating him. "You were placed in enemy ranks," he said. "Yes." "To protect me." "Yes." "For 8 years." "Yes." Drave stopped walking. "And what happens now?" Kethra's expression didn't change, but her voice dropped slightly. "My mission is complete." Drave frowned. "You're still alive." "Exactly." The meaning of those words hit him a second later. "Wait." Her eyes shifted toward the ceiling, toward the distant sky above the hospital. "They're coming." Drave's hand instinctively moved toward his sidearm. "Who?" Kethra's answer came quietly. "The ones who created me." At that exact moment, every alarm in the military hospital began screaming, because something massive had just appeared in orbit above the planet. And it wasn't human. Red emergency lights flooded the command center. Drave burst into the operations room while officers shouted over each other. "What the hell is happening?" he demanded. A tactical officer spun the holographic display toward him. The projection showed a massive vessel hovering above the atmosphere. Black, angular, alien. Not part of any known fleet. It appeared out of nowhere, the officer said. No warp signature. No approach vector. Drave studied the ship. Cold dread settled in his stomach. "Kethra called it," he muttered. The intelligence officer beside him frowned. "You're saying that thing is here for her?" Drave nodded slowly. "Yes." Another officer looked up from his console. "They're broadcasting." "Put it through." The lights dimmed. A holographic figure appeared above the table. Tall. Thin. Inhuman. Its voice sounded like grinding metal. "Human authorities. We request the immediate return of our asset." Drave's jaw tightened. "Your asset?" "Kethra 9. The room fell silent. The alien continued calmly. "She was deployed under contract with your military command. Our agreement has ended." Drave stepped forward. "You're telling me my government hired you to place an alien sniper in enemy ranks? Just to keep me alive?" "Yes." The figure's glowing eyes flickered. "You are statistically valuable to the continuation of this war." A chill rippled through the room. Drave felt something ugly rising in his chest. You manipulated an entire war to keep one soldier alive? Correct. Drave looked around the room, at the shocked faces of his officers, then back at the hologram. And if I refuse to give her back? The alien figure didn't hesitate. Then we will retrieve our property by force. Right on cue, orbital sensors screamed. Multiple smaller ships detached from the massive vessel above. Dropships, heading directly for the base. Drave's hand slowly closed into a fist, because after 8 years of war, he had just discovered something far worse than the enemy. The people who had been pulling the strings all along. Behind him, the medical bay doors slid open. Kethra stood in the hallway, injured, unarmed but watching the incoming dropships. And when she spoke, her voice carried a quiet certainty. General, you should run, because the ones coming for me don't lose. The base sirens howled like wounded animals. Dropships tore through the cloud layer above the military installation, engines roaring like thunder. Inside the command center, General Carson Drave watched the tactical display light up with red icons. Too many. Impact in 90 seconds, the operations officer said. Drave turned toward the hallway. Kethra stood there, pale but steady. Medical bandages covered half her torso, yet her posture remained that of a trained sniper, balanced, alert, ready. You should run, she repeated quietly. Drave shook his head. This is my base. They're not here for your base, she replied. They're here for me. The ground trembled. The first dropship slammed into the landing field outside. Then another. And another. Drave grabbed a rifle from the weapons rack and tossed a sidearm toward Kethra. The alien caught it smoothly, despite the restraint still hanging from one wrist. You're injured, he said. She checked the weapon. I've fought in worse condition. The first explosion rocked the building. Enemy breaching charges. Contact on the outer wall. Someone shouted over comms. Drave moved toward the exit. Then let's see how good these collectors really are. The corridor doors burst open moments later. Black armored soldiers flooded inside, tall, mechanical, faceless. Not mercenaries. Not soldiers. Something else entirely. Kethra fired first. Her pistol cracked 3 times. 3 enemies dropped instantly. Drave blinked. Nice shooting. They're slow, she said calmly. More poured into the hallway. Drave opened fire with his rifle. Human soldiers joined the fight from both sides of the corridor. Gunfire filled the air. But the enemy kept advancing. One of the machines stepped forward through the barrage and lifted a heavy plasma cannon. Drave swore, that's not fair. Kethra grabbed his shoulder and shoved him sideways. The cannon fired. The wall behind them vanished in a blast of molten metal. Drave rolled to his feet. How many of these things are there? Kethra checked the hallway calmly. Enough. More dropships thundered overhead. The tactical display flickered. Enemy signatures multiplying. Drave felt the weight of the situation settling in. They weren't here for a fight. They were here for a retrieval, and they had brought an army to make sure it happened. Kethra glanced toward the ceiling sensors. General, that was only the first wave.
The firefight lasted 12 brutal minutes. Then it stopped. Not because the enemy was gone, because the base had been cut in half. Drave crouched behind an overturned medical cart, breathing hard. Bodies, human and machine, covered the corridor. Kethra reloaded her weapon with steady hands. You fight well for someone who wasn't trained by us, she said. Drave snorted. Humans improvise. A distant explosion rattled the floor. The operations wing. Drave checked his tactical tablet. Half the base had gone dark. They're isolating sectors, he said grimly. Kethra nodded. They want to corner me. Drave looked at her sharply. No. She met his eyes. You don't understand the contract, General. What contract? Your command hired the collectors to protect you. That part I understood. Her voice dropped slightly. But they didn't hire them to protect me. Drave froze. What? They hired them to make sure you survive the war. Drave stared at her. And if that means killing you? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she checked the corridor again, then said quietly, My survival was never part of the agreement. Something cold settled in Drave's chest. You've been risking your life for 8 years. Yes. For a mission that ends with you being disposable. Yes. Drave shook his head slowly. That's insane. It's efficient. Another explosion shook the building, enemy scanners sweeping closer. Drave looked down at his rifle, then at Kethra. You saved my life dozens of times. That was the mission. Still counts. He stood. Which means I'm not handing you over. Kethra stared at him, confused, almost surprised. Why? Drave gave a tired half-smile. Because humans are bad at abandoning people? Heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. The enemy had found them again. Kethra listened to the approaching machines, then said quietly, General, if you protect me, they won't stop hunting you.
The hallway lights flickered. Drave and Kethra moved quickly through the damaged corridors toward the hangar bay. Gunfire echoed behind them as human soldiers delayed the advancing machines. Drave spoke into his comm. All remaining units fall back to Hangar 3. Static answered him. Then a single voice. Copy that.
General.
Kethra studied him as they ran. You're risking your entire command structure. Not the first time. Your government will not approve. Drave shrugged. They already lost the right to complain. They reached the hangar. The massive doors were half open. Several transport ships waited on the launch pad. Human soldiers scrambled to prepare them. Drave turned to Kethra. Can you fly? She nodded once. Yes. Good. Another explosion rocked the base. The machine soldiers burst into the hangar entrance seconds later. Drave fired immediately. The battle erupted again, but this time the humans were moving. Transport engines roared to life. Soldiers boarded while covering each other. Kethra ran toward the nearest ship. Drave followed close behind. One of the machines stepped into the open and aimed directly at them. Kethra fired. The machine staggered but didn't fall. It raised its cannon. Drave dove forward, tackling her behind a loading crate. The plasma blast ripped across the hangar. Ships exploded. Fire filled the room. Drave coughed through the smoke. Okay, and that one's tougher. Kethra looked toward the burning wreckage. General. What? Her eyes focused on the machine slowly walking through the flames. That one isn't here to capture me. Drave frowned. Then why? The machine's voice boomed through the hangar. Contract termination authorized. Drave's blood ran cold, because suddenly he understood. The collectors weren't here to retrieve their asset anymore. They were here to erase all evidence of the contract, including him. Kethra whispered one quiet sentence. General, now they're hunting both of us.
The hangar burned. Transport ships exploded one after, another as plasma. Blasts tore across the landing deck. Metal screamed. Fire rolled across the ceiling. General Carson Drave dragged Kethra behind a cargo container as another blast ripped through the wall. That machine's not here to capture you, he said. Kethra nodded grimly. It's here to erase the contract. Drave peeked around the crate. The machine soldier walked through the flames like a metal ghost. Bullets from human rifles sparked uselessly against its armored frame. On its chest glowed the symbol of the collectors. Drave grimaced. Fantastic. They brought the expensive model. Another blast slammed into the floor, throwing 2 soldiers across the hangar. Human forces were breaking. Drave knew it. Kethra looked toward the remaining transport ships. If we reach that one, she said, pointing to a small interceptor near the far wall, we can escape orbit. Drave followed her gaze. 300 meters away, across open ground, with a contract termination machine between them. Drave sighed. Of course it's on the other side. Kethra checked her pistol. General. What? We must run. The machine turned toward them, its weapon charging. Drave nodded once. All right. He grabbed a smoke grenade from his belt. On 3. Kethra crouched beside him. 1. The machine fired again. 2. The blast destroyed the crate behind them. Drave pulled the pin. 3. Smoke filled the hangar instantly. They ran. Gunfire and plasma tore through the smoke as they sprinted across the burning floor. Halfway there, the machine emerged from the smoke directly in front of them, its cannon aimed straight at Drave. Kethra stepped in front of him again, just like she had 7 years ago.
Drave grabbed her shoulder and pulled her aside. Stop doing that, he shouted. Kethra looked confused. You are statistically more valuable. I don't care about the statistics. The machine fired. They dove behind the interceptors. Landing gear as the blast scorched the metal hull. Drave rolled to his feet and climbed into the cockpit. Get in! Kethra jumped into the co-pilot seat. The interceptor roared to life. But the machine wasn't finished. It lifted into the air with small thrusters and landed directly on the ship's wing. Metal groaned. Drave stared at the console. You've got to be kidding me. Kethra pulled open the canopy latch. What are you doing? Drave asked. Finishing the mission. She climbed out onto the wing. The wind from the engines whipped around her as the machine turned its weapon toward her chest. Drave shouted from inside the cockpit. Kethra! She raised her pistol calmly. You were never meant to die in this war, General. Neither were you. For the first time since they met. She hesitated. The machine fired. Kethra fired first. 3 shots. Perfect accuracy. The machine's weapon arm exploded. Drave slammed the throttle. The interceptor shot upward, throwing the damaged machine off the wing. The ship blasted through the burning hangar roof and into the night sky. Below them, the base collapsed in fire. Orbit sensors lit up, because the massive collector ship was waiting for them above the planet. The interceptor burst through the clouds. Above them loomed the collector vessel, a black wall in space. Drave stared at it. That thing is bigger than our entire fleet. Kethra studied the sensors. They are locking weapons. Of course they are. The comm channel crackled. The same cold metallic voice returned. General Carson Drave, you have violated contractual terms. Drave rolled his eyes. Send me the bill. Return our asset immediately. Drave looked at Kethra. She waited silently, for the first time since they met. She looked uncertain. Drave turned back to the comm. No. The voice paused. You misunderstand the situation. No, Drave replied calmly. I understand perfectly. He leaned back in the pilot seat. You hired someone to keep me alive. Congratulations. It worked. The alien voice darkened. Then surrender the asset. Drave shook his head. Here's the problem with your contract. What problem? Drave smiled slightly. You forgot something about humans. The collector ship's weapons powered up. What is that? Drave glanced at Kethra, then at the endless stars ahead. When someone saves our life, we return the favor. He slammed the throttle. The interceptor shot directly toward the massive alien ship. Behind them, human fleet signals suddenly appeared on the radar. Reinforcements arriving. Kethra stared at the scanner. You called them? Drave grinned. No. Humans just tend to show up when things get interesting. The collectors had just discovered a terrifying truth. They had built a perfect contract. But they had made one fatal mistake. They had involved a human who refuses to abandon people.